This is Bedtime Stories, Grown-Up Edition, Collateral Damage, Part 17. When we left off, the men had said their see you laters to their wives and children. We found out that Woody and True had been working together. MomBrenda let the Queen Mother know that Donovan stopped in to see her before he left. He asked her not to tell anyone and left her with several sealed envelopes that he asked her to disperse when the time was right. And she gave the Queen Mother and Maribel their letters at the perfect time. Meanwhile, in the Dominican Republic, Veronica just put her children to bed, and she is extremely tired. She and the children had a pretty long day, but that doesn't explain her fatigue. They've been in the DR for a little over 5 weeks, and all in all, they're adjusting pretty well. Of course, the children miss their father and their large family back in the States. But their relationship with Veronica is pretty solid, and they don't even realize that something is wrong. She's convinced them that they're on a vacation in paradise, and that they're all playing one big game of pretend. That if anyone asks, that she's both of their mothers, and that they're twins. And since she's been in baby Chance's life for so long, he has no issue with that. He's never known his biological mother, so Veronica's not competing with Destiny's memory. She's also convinced them to call one another and themselves by their new fake names, Clarence and Claire. And she's Claudia. They've finally gotten to the place where they answer to their new names, even when they're alone with Veronica. So Veronica has hired a sweet, older woman to be a housekeeper/nanny who helps her keep the house clean, do some shopping, and watching the children. She came background checked and highly recommended. Veronica is paying a pretty penny for her services too. She hired her through a reputable agency. She has decades of experience working in high-profile Dominican families' homes. So 2 weeks after the woman, Miss Louise, started working for Veronica, and she knew that the children were comfortable with her and very comfortable with their new names, she took that flight to Mexico. She told the children that if they did a good job continuing to play the name game while she was gone, she would take them on an adventure day. Thus far, the only place Veronica had taken the children was out on the private beach attached to the property, shopping and for rides in the car. But there was so much to see and so much to do on the island, and she wanted to expose them to it all. She needed them to fall in love with the Dominican Republic as soon as possible. They'd already asked for their father a number of times and for their grandmother. A few of those times they asked in front of Miss Louise, and Veronica had to think fast and distract them. She didn't want anyone, not even Miss Louise, to know anything about their past. She was hyper-vigilant about anybody getting too close. So much so that she barely ventured out on her own either. As a matter of fact, she can't stop thinking about something that happened earlier that day. That day, she took the children out on the beach, and a man approached them. He was flirting with Veronica. Seemed like he was trying to holler at her, but he kept looking at baby Chance. Now, she didn't think he was a pedo or anything, but she was real paranoid about the possibility that Donovan might send somebody to find them, and she was hoping and praying that she never told him about her plans to retire in the DR. She really couldn't remember. She knew that she couldn't be too careful. All she knew was that she was following her dreams, and this was a dream of hers ever since her first trip to the DR. She'd been working since she was 14 years old, and other than buying her first car, she saved every dime of her money for her high school graduation trip to the Dominican Republic. That was going to be her present to herself. Imagine her surprise when the day before her 18th birthday, she deposited her last paycheck from her high school job into her teen checking account, only to discover that every dime of her money was gone. Her mother, Nancy, had wiped her account out, and when she got home and confronted her, her mother had the nerve to say that she couldn't afford to take a trip out of the country when she still needed to pay her tuition. Nancy said, "I know you got scholarships and grants, but you still got to balance after that, and that school is expecting me to pay for it. I'm a single mother. You ain't got a daddy, so ain't nobody else to help me pay for it. Why should you get to keep all that money and not contribute anything to your own education? Veronica said, if you needed help paying the balance, all you had to do was tell me. How about this? Transfer the money back to my account and I will pay the balance myself. You don't have to worry about ever receiving a bill. Nancy said, no, I'm going to pay the bill because I can't trust you to pay it. Veronica said, if I could save money for 4 years, I can certainly pay a few $1,000s a year towards my own education. What's this really about, Ma? Nancy said, you are a child and I'm the parent. I don't owe you no explanations. Legally, every dime in that account is mine because you can't have the account without me on it. That's why I was able to transfer the money. They argued for hours. And eventually, Veronica just stopped arguing and she started planning. The next day was Veronica's 18th birthday. So she went to the bank and opened up an account in her own name only. Then she went home and packed up everything she owned. When her mother came home from work that night, she stole her mother's debit card out of her purse, drove to the ATM, and used it to transfer every dime from her mother's account back into her teen account. Then she used her own debit card to transfer all of the money from her teen account into her new account. She didn't just transfer back the money that her mother stole. She took every dime that her mother had. Veronica said, you want to play? Oh, we can play. It would have been one thing if my mother would have just took the money that was necessary to pay Texas Southern University. But she took all of my money, knowing that I wouldn't have been able to go on my trip without it. I didn't plan to spend every dime in the Dominican Republic, but all I had secured was my flight and put a deposit on my hotel and excursions. So I still needed to pay the balance. So since she took all of my money, I took all of hers. Then she drove back home, put her mother's debit card back in her purse like nothing happened, and went to bed. The next morning, she was the first person inside the bank. She got a cashier's check for the entire balance in her new account, and then drove across town to a completely different bank, opened up an account, and deposited the cashier's check. On her way out of town, she stopped at her best friend Jada's house. Her and Jada were supposed to be going to the DR together. When she got there, she told Jada everything that happened. And then she said, we can reschedule our flights to spring break. The deposit for the hotel and the excursions is non-refundable, but I'll reimburse you. Jada agreed, and then Veronica told her that she'd see her in 3 weeks at Texas Southern University, where they'd both been accepted. Then she got in her car and drove to Houston. When she got there, she checked in to a pay-by-the-week hotel, found herself a part-time job, and just waited for school to start. What Veronica didn't know was that her bipolar mother didn't steal that money just because she didn't have all of the money for the tuition. She stole the money because she didn't have all the money for her household bills. Her hours had been cut at work, and she was several months behind on rent and her car note. She needed that money to catch up on all those bills and get ahead. Instead of telling her daughter the truth, she tried to pull the I'm in charge because I'm the parent and you're a child card. And in the end, Veronica took all the money, cut off all ties with her mother, and her mother still got evicted. Her car was repossessed, and eventually she lost her job. The next time Veronica heard anything about her mother, it was about 2 days before spring break, and she was called into the chaplain's office at the college. When the chaplain told her that her mother was found dead, Veronica said, so she couldn't wait until after spring break. It's like she just knew that I had rescheduled my trip to the Dominican Republic. Well, I'm going to fix her wagon. Then Veronica called the funeral home and told them to keep her mother on ice until she got back from the Dominican Republic, because she was not rescheduling her trip again. Her and Jada went to the DR for spring break and had the time of their lives. So much so that Veronica decided to celebrate every milestone in her life in the Dominican Republic. Her and Jada went back when they graduated from college, and Veronica and Tracy went after they sold their first $1 million house and received a check for 50 grand. And now, Veronica's celebrating having $1.75 million by living in the Dominican Republic. It's too bad that she doesn't know that man who approached her on the beach that day was sent there to lay eyes on the children. His job was to verify whether they were in fact the St. James children, and he was sent there by the current head of the Ramirez family, the last employer of her housekeeper/nanny. Miss Louise left the employ of the Ramirez family on good terms. The Ramirez children were all too old for a nanny, so her services were no longer needed. But she was given a pretty hefty severance package. And since she wasn't really old enough for retirement, she decided to save it until she was ready. She let the agency know that she was available and what kind of light work she was looking for. And when they contacted her about a family that just recently relocated to the DR, she met them and accepted the job. So the day that Veronica left her with the kids all day long and didn't say where she was going, the day she flew to Mexico and back, that just added to Miss Louise's ongoing suspicions. Miss Louise is a lot more experienced with children than Veronica is, and she's worked with quite a few sets of twins. So one of the first things that she noticed is that these twins don't communicate like twins. Then one day, she heard Clarence ask Claire if she liked her new name. And being an experienced caregiver, she knew how to get kids talking. So she asked Clarence why he didn't like his new name. And he took the bait. Thinking that Miss Louise already knew his name, he said, "Because my daddy named me Chance, and I like that better." Not missing a beat, Miss Louise said, "So why does Claudia want me to call you Clarence?" And baby Chance said, "Because we're playing a game. Clarence is my paradise name." Baby Bella, overhearing this and remembering that her mother told them not to ever discuss their old names or to tell anyone anything about themselves or their family, said, "Be quiet," to Chance in Creole. So the day that Veronica left the children with Miss Louise all day, Miss Louise found a way to get Clarence alone. And she said, "So I noticed that you children speak several languages. I heard you two speaking to one another in French." And baby Chance said, "That's not French, Miss Louise. It's Creole." And she said, "Oh, okay. Well, where did you guys learn how to speak Creole?" And baby Chance said, "My grandmère and my grandpops speak Creole all the time. They taught us. They're from Trinidad." Then she said, "I noticed that your mother's Spanish isn't as fluent as yours. And it doesn't seem like she speaks Creole either." And on cue, baby Chance said, "That's because she's not my real mother." When she said, "But I thought Claire was your sister." Baby Chance said, "She is, but we're not twins. We were just born on the same day." Miss Louise said, "Well, now I'm confused." And taking the bait, baby Chance said, "Veronica is Bella's mother. My mother's name was Destiny, and she died when I was born." Chance didn't even realize that he had just told Miss Louise Veronica's real name and baby Bella's. But when Miss Louise heard the name Bella, she froze. While she isn't quite old enough for full retirement, she's absolutely old enough to remember the war between the Ramirez and the Baptiste families. And she vividly remembers the damage that the Queenpin did to the Ramirez organization. Back then, she knew her as Bella Baptiste, but the rumors were that she had married the heir to the St. James family. And when she looked at baby Chance again, she realized that she was looking at the spitting image of Bella Baptiste. So she said, "Clarence, I've trusted you with my real last name. Will you trust me and tell me yours?" "I promise not to tell Veronica. I mean Claudia." They both giggled, and then Chance said, "It's St. James." Later that day, she surreptitiously took pictures of each of the children, and then she sent them via text with all of the information she had to her contact in the Ramirez family. A few hours later, she received a response that said, "In a few days, you can start your full retirement."